Get out. Your old lady smell is ruining my new house, Michaela shouted as she threw disinfectant on me during her housewarming party. Drenched and overwhelmed by the pungent smell, I felt something snap inside me. Standing up silently, I flashed a terrifying smile at Michaela and said, "Then I'll clean this up for you. After all, I built it." I went upstairs to Michaela's room to retrieve something. My name is Harmony, a 72-year-old retired confectioner. More precisely, I was a patissier who ran a cake shop until a leg injury forced me into retirement. Now, I help my son and his wife who have taken over the business and live a modest life. Harmony, you must be happy your son took over, people would say at the tea parties I occasionally attended. I brought cakes made by my son and his wife, earning praise from neighbors. Today, at the tea party, I was engrossed in conversations when a neighbor mentioned my son. I stared at my tea, lost in thought. "A shop with many memories, isn't it?" someone remarked, prompting me to reminisce. Indeed, my life had been full of ups and downs. I opened my patisserie at 35 after a decade of training in France. Upon returning, my parents opposed the idea, saying a cake shop in the countryside wouldn't work. I defied them, saying, "I'll do it my way," and opened my shop. It became popular in 6 months, becoming the talk of the town. My French-trained skills were praised, attracting customers quickly. My once opposed parents came to respect and fully support me. "Time to think of the next new creation," my husband Daniel said, supporting our cake shop while preparing for the next day. "Summer is tough for sales. Maybe a cold dessert would be a hit." That's what we were discussing when we heard the bell at the shop door. I hurried to the counter. "Welcome," I called out, only to see Michaela, my sister-in-law, who appeared 2 years older than me. She was always flamboyant, having moved from the city. She dressed to stand out, enjoying the attention. Today she wore an actress hat and sunglasses, not fitting for the countryside. Honestly, I disliked her. Her hurtful remarks and belittling of our cake shop were intolerable. Being a doctor at a university hospital, she flaunted her income and education, but only when my brother Kendrick wasn't around. I was deeply annoyed by her cowardice. Boring as ever. The decor is outdated and it's dusty. "Do you even clean?" Michaela said, worried her fancy clothes would get dirty. I couldn't hide my annoyance and responded curtly, "Did you come just to say that?" "I just stopped by on my way to my new house. Why else would I visit such a place?" she replied, looking around carelessly and picking up a cookie, placing it roughly at the register. "I can't see the shop lasting, but I'll contribute to the sale since you're Kendrick's sister." She bought a mere $7 cookie with that attitude. Who could warmly welcome such a sister-in-law? If she were Kendrick's wife, I'd have her out of here immediately. As I wrapped the product, grappling with these complaints in my heart, Michaela continued her tirade. "Poor Kendrick, having such a failure for a sister. He said he gave up on his own shop because of you." Her words struck my heart painfully. Kendrick had generously helped finance my shop's construction when I returned and found no support. Only Kendrick stood by me. Later, I discovered the money he used was his own saved-up capital for starting a business. If you hadn't interfered, Kendrick might have had his own shop by now. Really pishable. "Then why don't you help him financially?" Daniel appeared behind me and retorted sharply at Michaela, glaring at her. "It's between Harmony and Kendrick, not for outsiders like us. Only Kendrick has the right to complain about Harmony. Do you even have the right to blame her?" Daniel, undaunted by Michaela, confronted her. Michaela, seemingly annoyed by Daniel's audacity, furrowed her brows and removed her sunglasses with a puzzled look. "Of course I have the right. That money was mine. You have no business interfering in this. The funds for Harmony's shop were from before Kendrick married you, right? If Kendrick has no complaints, why should you persistently blame Harmony? Harmony is my wife. Which husband would remain silent while his wife is being maligned?" Daniel shielded me from showing my tears to Michaela. I felt reassured by his presence and grateful to be his wife. Michaela, not amused by Daniel's words, roughly grabbed the wrapped cookies from the counter and left without another word. After she left, we put up the closed sign, and Daniel embraced me. "You endured well, Harmony," he said softly. "I can't do this anymore. I don't have the confidence to get along with someone like her. Even if she's Kendrick's wife, I can't bear being treated this way." "Are you not going to tell Kendrick?" Daniel asked gently. "I can't. He's already looking after Mom and Dad. I can't trouble him just because I can't get along with her." Kendrick, working as a chef in a hotel, was also taking care of our parents. Despite the long commute he managed, he had saved to open his own shop and be closer to our parents. It was with this in mind that he was saving money. Money can be earned again. I want to see you succeed as a top patissier. This money is an investment in your future. You'll definitely become famous, Kendrick assured me, investing $2 million in my startup. I was deeply grateful to Kendrick, and when he married Michaela, I was overjoyed. But I never expected her to be like this. I was tormented daily about what to do. Tomorrow we're going to Kendrick's housewarming, right? Maybe you could mention it to him. If Kendrick talks to Michaela, maybe she'll stop, Daniel suggested. Reluctantly agreeing, I focused on closing up the shop. Lately, I couldn't bring myself to tell Kendrick about Michaela. Kendrick's happiness while he supported Mom and Dad was precious. Despite sacrificing his own dream of opening a shop, I couldn't burden him further with Michaela's issue. I simply couldn't. The next day, Daniel and I, with a shortcake in hand, visited Kendrick's new home. Harmony and Daniel, long time no see. Glad you could make it, Kendrick welcomed us warmly at the doorstep. Michaela was out shopping and wasn't there. I felt relieved not seeing her. Noticing this, Kendrick looked at me worriedly. What's wrong? You look pale. Is it the new house smell? No way, just had a bit too much to drink with Danny last night. I forced a smile to reassure Kendrick and avoid any awkward conversation. I asked to see around the new house. Kendrick shared that apart from the tidy living room, their personal items were still in boxes. We agreed not to go upstairs as per his request. Soon, our parents arrived, and we enjoyed a rare family gathering. Then Daniel seized the opportunity to bring up yesterday's topic. Sorry to bring this up at a housewarming, but there's something about Michaela we need to discuss. Wait, Danny. I wasn't ready, I panicked, but Daniel looked at me earnestly, holding my hand. Harmony, I've seen how hard you've worked, thinking about the family, keeping your struggles to yourself. It seems unfair to Kendrick and the others. Struggles? Harmony, have you been having a hard time? Kendrick asked, his expression full of concern. Realizing I was hiding something, everyone looked worried. I regretted my foolish thought of just enduring it all. Actually, I've been harassed by Michaela for a long time, I confessed. Everyone was shocked, especially Kendrick. Knowing his wife was bullying his sister-in-law was understandably distressing. Unable to continue, Daniel explained the situation for me. A heavy silence followed, and I wondered if I should have kept quiet. That's when Kendrick, as if having made a decision, spoke to Mom. Mom, I've made up my mind. That's right, no need to hold back anymore. Daniel and I exchanged confused looks at the unexpected response. Just as we were about to ask more, we heard the front door open. I'm back. It's so hot outside. Is Kendrick not here? Michaela returned home at the worst possible time. The family's spirits dampened as if sensing the charged air of her untimely arrival. Kendrick excused himself and headed towards the entrance. Let's store the cake in the fridge for now, Daniel suggested. As Mom and I moved to do so, reaching for the fridge door, Michaela stormed into the living room. Hey, don't you touch our stuff, she shouted, startling Mom and me. I'll take care of the house. Just stay put. Fading a creepy pleasant smile, she snatched the cake from me. Her words seemed softened, but there was an underlying sharpness, especially as she roughly took the cake. Mom, witnessing this, was speechless and unable to react, shocked by such treatment in front of her. Feeling hurt, I urged Mom to join me on the living room sofa. Sitting next to Daniel, I tried to hold back my tears. Thank you all for coming to our housewarming today, Michaela said, her tone falsely sweet. If you have gifts, you can leave them here. I'll gladly accept them, Michaela said, taking over as if she were the host. Her greedy words irritated both Daniel and me. Our parents, watching her closely, reluctantly presented their gift to Michaela. Following suit, though not keen, I handed over my gift, which Michaela snatched. What a boring gift. Typical, Michaela muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Shocked by her audacity to complain despite receiving a gift, I felt my patience turning into anger. Then Michaela took out a bottle of disinfectant from a supermarket bag. Well then, let's wrap this up, she said, splashing the disinfectant on me. Drenched and stunned, I was speechless as my family cried out in alarm. So, I guess it's the height of the party, Michaela said, turning toward me and splashing the disinfectant again. Completely soaked, I couldn't believe the sudden turn of events. My family gasped. Hey, Michaela, what are you doing? Mom shouted, raising her voice and standing in front of me to protect me. Everyone glared at Michaela. Michaela sneered and threw her final words at me. The smell of an old lady will dirty my new house. Get out. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Silently, I stood up with a frighteningly pleasant smile and said, "So you hate filth that much? Well, let me clean it up for you. After all, I built this place." Seeing me smile, Michaela seemed terrified and stepped back. I snatched all the presents from her, ignoring her complaints, and headed to the second floor. Conveniently, there was a nameplate with Michaela's name on it in front of the door, and I boldly walked inside. I picked up a cardboard box still packed and dropped it from the second floor to the first with a bang. "Hey, what are you doing?" Michaela tried to stop me as the boxes tumbled down one after another. With so many boxes rolling down, she couldn't come up and could only desperately scream in vain. As I dropped the last box, she yelled, "Do you realize what you're doing?" Michaela, showing her true colors in front of Kendrick, glared at me with a devilish face. Unconcerned, I went downstairs and asked Daniel with a smile, "Can you hold back that noisy trash for me? We can't let the dirty germs out. The new house will get dirty with the smell of mold, right?" Daniel must have been scared too. The words from my ever-smiling face were no longer treating Michaela as a human. I threw all her belongings outside with apparent delight. People might think I've lost my mind, and it can't be helped that they think so. "Stop it, Kendrick. What are you just staring at? Stop her. Isn't your sister out of her mind?" Michaela screamed desperately. However, Kendrick did not respond. Instead, he silently watched my next move. The entrance was overflowing with Michaela's cardboard boxes, a mess, but it couldn't be helped after throwing everything outside. I clapped my hands and walked towards Michaela for the final touch. "Well, now it's just Michaela left." "What do you mean? You think you can get away with this?" She spat, her voice laced with venom. "Who knows? I can't hear the threats of trash," I replied, my smile mechanical and eerie. Michaela gasped, looking at me fearfully. Without paying her any more attention, I instructed Daniel to kick her out along with her slippers. "Hey, stop. No, Kendrick, help me." Michaela begged Kendrick for help, but he had no intention of listening to her. At this point, I understood what Kendrick and the others meant. There wasn't a single person on her side here. "Get out if you understand. This is my house after all." "What? What are you talking about?" Before Michaela could finish, Daniel dragged her out, pushing her outside the entrance. He immediately closed the door, double-locked it, and even chained it. Michaela, now completely unable to enter, was left outside in the summer heat. She banged on the door and screamed for about 10 minutes, but her strength gradually waned. To make matters worse, neighbors came by and started whispering about her shabby appearance. "Mommy, look, that lady is outside in her slippers," a child said, pointing. "Hey, don't do that. Don't point," a parent chided, though even passing children mocked Michaela. For someone so full of pride, this public humiliation was hell. She crammed all her belongings into her car and fled the scene that day. Seeing this, I regained my composure and hastily turned to Kendrick. "What should we do, Kendrick?" "I'm sorry, that was?" "It's okay, I know the situation. Besides, we should be the ones apologizing," Kendrick said gently. He suggested we go back to the living room where Mom had prepared tea and cake. I borrowed clothes from Kendrick and quickly changed to avoid catching a cold. After changing, we all sat down, trying to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. I sat on the living room sofa as Kendrick began explaining why he had been silent all this time. "That woman was actually harassing Mom in the same way," he said. "What?" I was shocked by this sudden revelation. Daniel and I looked at Mom in surprise. "It all happened when I wasn't around," Mom continued. "She constantly harassed and mocked me, even made fun of you. It was really terrible. Michaela had been bad-mouthing you every time we met, suggesting that your poor upbringing was due to my bad parenting. She claimed that if we had more money, Kendrick wouldn't have had to struggle. That's what I confessed to Kendrick yesterday." Kendrick nodded. "Mom told me everything, and I decided that since you built the house, we should explain the situation to you and your family before deciding what to do next. That's what led to today." Michaela, who even tormented Mom, could never be forgiven. Trembling with anger, I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Seeing this, Daniel gently placed his hand over mine. "Harmony, I know how much you care about family. Maybe you don't have to endure this anymore," Daniel said softly. "After hearing all this, I definitely can't go on with her either," I said, my resolve solidifying. Inspired by Kendrick's determination, I steeled myself to teach Michaela a lesson. We pledged to act, and the next day, my phone was flooded with a storm of calls from Michaela, Kendrick, Daniel, and I decided to meet her alone. "What do you mean by kicking me out of the house? You won't get away with what you did." Michaela's shrill voice echoed as she entered my office. Wearing the same clothes as yesterday, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, she looked miserable. Her loud voice was irritating, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled sweetly, further infuriating her with my words. "I cleaned up because you said the new house gets dirty, right?" "What?" "I don't want someone as ugly as you in the house. The new house will get dirty with germs, right?" I said, putting my index finger to my lips, feigning cuteness. As unsuitable as it felt for me, it seemed to affect Michaela. Her face turned red as a boiled lobster, showing her anger. "Who's ugly? I'm far more beautiful than a third-rate woman like you," she spat. "To say that with the same clothes as yesterday and such a dirty face. Impressive," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Whose fault do you think it is that I ended up like this?" Michaela retorted, doubling down on her previous provocations. "A woman like you, acting all high and mighty," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew there was no turning back now. I taunted Michaela, which angered her enough to lunge at me. Daniel quickly stood protectively in front of me, and Kendrick, usually mild-mannered, showed his anger for the first time. "Enough. You're in no position to talk down to Harmony and her family," he said firmly. "Why should I be the one getting scolded? The bad one is clearly that woman." Michaela remained defiant, even against Kendrick's words. She must have looked down on Kendrick as well. Deep down, she was after money, blaming me for losing it and despising me despite having her own earnings. Her greed was despicable. As I glared at her with utter contempt, Kendrick slammed a piece of paper in front of her. "I have no intention of going on with someone who can't even value my family. We're getting a divorce." The paper Kendrick presented was a divorce petition already signed by him and our father as a guarantor. Seeing this, Michaela suddenly regained her composure and clung to Kendrick in a panic. "Wait, a divorce? Just wait. I don't want to hear what you have to say. My mind is made up, and if you refuse the divorce, I'll go to court if I have to. Where do you think the money for that will come from? You don't have the financial power, so don't talk big. I'll support you financially, so don't worry." Michaela tried to act humble, but Kendrick's words revealed her true nature again. Now that we have proof of her looking down on Kendrick financially, we could crush her without remorse. Smiling, I intervened between them. "Didn't you know? Besides this store, I have several others." Michaela looked at me, confusion and desperation in her eyes. She was trying to comprehend what she had just heard, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. "You thought you could manipulate Kendrick for his money? You thought wrong." Her face turned pale as the realization of her situation set in. The tables had turned, and she knew it. Kendrick, Daniel, and I stood united, and there was no way she could worm her way out of this. Kendrick gently but firmly pushed Michaela away from him. "It's over, Michaela. Leave and don't come back." Defeated, Michaela had no choice but to leave. As she walked out, her once arrogant demeanor was replaced with a sense of utter defeat. We watched her go, feeling the sense of relief and closure. Turning back to Kendrick and Daniel, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. Kendrick smiled warmly. "We're family. We protect each other." "I have enough financial power to fight you," I said, causing Michaela to gasp in surprise. A TV show had previously featured one of my regular customers praising my shop. The reporter raved about its beauty and deliciousness, leading to its popularity. Requests for more stores came flooding in, and now I have a nationwide chain. Kendrick was the only one who supported the opening of my shop. As a thank you, I gifted him that house. "I had also heard about your plans to open a clinic nearby and thought you'd need money." Michaela's face turned pale upon hearing the whole situation. She must have realized she'd picked a fight with the wrong person. She was speechless. "Since I still hold the property rights, I am the owner of that house. I can sue you for trespassing. What will you do? Will you fight?" With a smile, I cornered Michaela, who seemingly gave in and began to profusely apologize. Even though Michaela continued to apologize, our family had no intention of forgiving her, and we kicked her out of the store. Kendrick and Michaela eventually went to court for a divorce. Given everything that had happened, our lawyer assured us that the divorce would be granted. Our family savored this victory. During the time she was kicked out, Michaela's face became well known in the neighborhood, and no one was sympathetic towards her. Her clinic had no patients and closed within 3 months. She shamefully fled the town. Thus, our family found peace. I continued managing my shops, and Kendrick finally opened his own. Kendrick, Dad, and Mom started living in the new house, which we remodeled for accessibility. Harmony, what happened? You suddenly went quiet, a neighbor asked, snapping me back to reality during a tea party. Sorry, it's nothing. I'm just really grateful to those kids, I responded. Thanks to them, I'm now enjoying a peaceful retirement with my husband. As we enjoyed the cake, I reflected on how these nearly 40 years were the stepping stones to my current happiness. Starting today, my husband wants us to live with my parents. I was caught off guard by this sudden suggestion. We just said goodbye to my father, who recently passed away after being sick for a long time. Despite the sadness of the funeral still lingering, my husband packed up and left our house. He said we're moving to a villa my father left me. When we got there, my in-laws were already settled in. My name's Natalie, I'm 33, and I'm a designer who's just started living on my own. I've been living with Justin for 3 years now since we got married. My career as a designer is flourishing, and I'm known in my field. I earned well enough to have the apartment under my name. Sadly, my mother passed away during my college years, and last year, my father was diagnosed with cancer. Despite his brave fight, the disease progressed, and the doctors warned us to prepare for the worst. My father has always been there for me, especially since I started working. He's been a constant support and a vital part of my life. Learning about my father's illness shook me to the core. As his health deteriorated, I couldn't sleep, consumed by worry and fear. My husband asked about my dad's condition often, but his concern felt hollow. It seemed like he was waiting for the worst to happen. He's always felt insecure about earning less than me, and I wished he'd take pride in my success and be there for me when times get tough. He had a playful side, always wanting to win, even in simple things. My dad assured us not to worry and to focus on our relationship, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we should visit him while we still can. I was finding it harder to hide my growing frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our marriage was full of love and joy, but his insensitive comments about my dad's illness changed things. I realized he wasn't the same loving husband anymore. He works from home and thinks having someone around distracts me, but I plan to work from home too once I'm independent. I decided to rent a small office and commute, making it easier for me to visit the hospital. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home, leaving all the household chores for me to handle. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and coming home exhausted, I often found a mess waiting for me, with dishes left unwashed. It was clear he only thought of himself, disregarding my feelings. Living with him made me realize how little he understood me, leaving me feeling deeply lonely. Then my father passed away. We had already sold our family home as we had discussed with him. As I busied myself with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, more focused on phone calls or disappearing altogether. I pleaded with Justin to help me during this difficult time, but his phone interrupted our conversation. When he finally hung up, he brushed off my request, claiming he was busy with work calls. My frustration with him grew, especially amidst the turmoil of losing my father. His demeanor had turned colder, leaving me feeling even sadder. On the day of the funeral, Justin spent a long time chatting with his parents, leaving me feeling alone among the attendees. Despite the tension, the funeral proceeded smoothly, and we were able to wrap up the proceedings without any major issues. Out of the blue, my husband suggested we move in with his parents, as if it were the most natural thing to do. He even joked about divorce if I disagreed. I couldn't believe how casually he said it, especially considering the recent loss of my father. Fueled by grief and frustration, I retorted, "Live with them where? We don't even have a spare room here." In truth, one room in our apartment served as my husband's workspace, filled with his work stuff. Despite us not having kids, he used the space as if it were his own personal domain. "It's the villa you inherited," he said with a grin. I was taken aback. While we'd sold the family home, the villa held special memories of my father and me. I was determined to keep it that way. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing his own agenda. Living in that villa would be tough, I tried to explain, but he brushed it off. His parents had already made plans to move there, likely arranged during the funeral. With its spaciousness and peaceful setting, it was probably an appealing choice for them. Their move was already in motion, leaving no room for me to object. Every time I tried to speak up, my husband's disapproval was evident. "You're always thinking about yourself. Your constant absence because of your father's illness and emergencies has taken a toll on me. Do you even realize how much I've had to endure because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh, plunging my world into darkness. "Now that your father is gone, you need to listen to me." His year-long struggle was too much to bear. His callous remarks cut deep, leaving me in disbelief. I didn't want to accept that this was who my husband truly was, but it was clear he had little regard for my father or me. I couldn't shake the memory of my father's pain during his final days in the hospital. My father wouldn't have wanted me to just follow my husband's orders, leaving me behind, and he certainly wouldn't have wanted me to abandon my own feelings. In that moment, any love I had for my husband seemed to disappear. I couldn't shake the feeling of bitterness knowing he was excited about the villa while I was still mourning my father's death. Despite my emotions, I tried to warn him. "Living in the villa might not turn out as you expect." I highly doubt that was his response. With that, I had to accept his decision. I packed only the essentials and left our home. My husband looked puzzled at my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll come back for the rest later." I couldn't bear to exchange any more words with him. It was painful to see the faces of my in-laws, who I imagined were eagerly awaiting my father's death and were now happily moving into the villa. I followed my husband in silence, unable to bear the thought of my cherished place being taken over by his desires. While technically a villa, it's more like a cozy family home by the sea, nestled in a neighborhood where life is simple and peaceful. Despite its tranquil surroundings, it's conveniently close to the city center, making it a valuable piece of property. As I stepped out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. I remembered how my father used to carry me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train ride. When we reached the villa, my in-laws were already there. I couldn't shake the feeling of suspicion, realizing that my husband must have secretly given them a key without my knowledge. This discovery only added to my unease. The realization that my in-laws had schemed to move into the villa without informing anyone only deepened my mistrust. As I looked around, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they envisioned their future in this home. Despite being a single-family house, it was filled with sturdy furniture chosen by my father and slightly different European-style decor that must have appealed to my mother. "What a beautiful villa. It's simply perfect," they exclaimed. "Goodbye to that cramped apartment. We're so fortunate to be able to live here now. The view from the second floor is breathtaking. Your father was clever to keep such a wonderful home a secret. We should all enjoy it together, as a family." Their enthusiastic remarks only fueled my irritation. It seemed like they didn't fully grasp the weight of my father's passing and simply saw the villa as a luxurious home they lucked into. Truly, both the location and the house are perfect. "We're lucky your father left us this splendid villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband chimed in, joining his insensitive parents in laughter. They cracked open beers to celebrate the move, oblivious to the solemnity of the occasion. I sighed as I prepared snacks, watching them tarnish the precious memories I had of my parents at the dining table. I chose to bury my feelings and endure the night. The next morning, the tranquility of the villa was shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream. I instantly knew something was wrong. As I woke up and hurried to investigate, I found my father-in-law and husband causing a commotion, slightly delayed in reaching the source of the scream. In the bathroom, my mother-in-law lay on the floor, clutching her foot with a panicked look. "The floor collapsed under me," she gasped, clearly shaken by the sudden event. "But the floor seems fine. You must have just slipped, right?" My husband and father-in-law seemed oblivious to the severity of the situation as they examined the spot she indicated. However, the floorboards appeared smooth and undamaged. Despite their reassurances, she remained adamant. My father wouldn't have wanted me to just follow my husband's orders, leaving me behind. And he certainly wouldn't have wanted me to abandon my own feelings. In that moment, any love I had for my husband seemed to disappear. I couldn't shake the feeling of bitterness knowing he was excited about the villa while I was still mourning my father's death. Despite my emotions, I tried to warn him, living in the villa might not turn out as you expect. I highly doubt that was his response. With that, I had to accept his decision. I packed only the essentials and left our home. My husband looked puzzled at my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, I'll come back for the rest later. I couldn't bear to exchange any more words with him. It was painful to see the faces of my in-laws, who I imagined were eagerly awaiting my father's death and were now happily moving into the villa. As they examined the floor, I was certain it had collapsed. Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor? I questioned. Their expressions shifted to surprise as they focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping between them, I leaned forward and pressed my slippered foot on the distinct section. Whoa, what was that? The floorboard made a distinct sound and gave slightly under my weight, snapping back into place when I lifted my foot. If someone unknowingly stepped on it, they'd think the floor had collapsed. See, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap, I explained. What? That's dangerous. Is this house defective? They exclaimed. Calmly, I clarified, it's not a defect. My father intentionally installed it in this house. Why would he do that? They asked incredulously. It's what you'd call a mechanical mansion or a trick house, I revealed. As they examined the floor, I was certain it had collapsed. Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor? I questioned. Their expressions shifted to surprise as they focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping between them, I leaned forward and pressed my slippered foot on the distinct section. Whoa, what was that? The floorboard made a distinct sound and gave slightly under my weight, snapping back into place when I lifted my foot. If someone unknowingly stepped on it, they'd think the floor had collapsed. See, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap, I explained. What? That's dangerous. Is this house defective? They exclaimed. Calmly, I clarified. It's not a defect. My father intentionally installed it in this house. Why would he do that? They asked incredulously. It's what you'd call a mechanical mansion or a trick house, I revealed. In reality, my father was a devoted ninja enthusiast. This villa was his pride and joy, a treasure he poured his heart and soul into. As a child, I often tagged along while he tinkered with the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why there are traps and hidden mechanisms scattered throughout. A shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that gives way when stepped on, a door that requires a specific sequence to open, concealed passageways, and even secret rooms. Every corner of this villa is infused with my father's dreams and ingenuity, cultivated over many years. While it's perfectly suitable for everyday living for me, who grew up here and learned how to navigate all the traps from my father, it's a different story for my husband and in-laws, who are unfamiliar with its quirks. I did warn you that living here would be challenging, and I also mentioned that it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's intense ninja obsession is pretty well known among her relatives. It's surprising you didn't know, I remarked. Initially, my husband denied any knowledge, but now he seemed speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they turned to my husband for guidance on what to do next. Amidst the chaos, both my father-in-law and husband inadvertently triggered another trap, causing them to stumble. As I watched them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. Feel free to make yourselves comfortable for as long as you need, I said, my tone more sarcastic than welcoming. They had been enamored by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing little interest in my father's peculiar hobbies. Now, they were experiencing the consequences of their oversight. Even my attempts to explain the dangers of the traps fell on deaf ears. It's no big deal. We'll get used to it, my husband insisted confidently, and I responded with a knowing smile. I'll head back to the apartment to get things ready for our move, I told them before leaving them at the villa. However, the truth was, I had no plans for moving preparations. Instead, I intended to take a few days off to sort through my father's belongings. As expected, just 2 days later, my husband and in-laws had had enough. During that brief period, I found comfort in being alone, allowing me to slowly regain a sense of positivity as I planned my next steps. Before long, my father's villa gained attention as a unique attraction in the neighborhood. It became known as the Trick Mansion and was regularly featured in local newsletters. Curious visitors would stop by whenever the villa was unoccupied. Looking back, I remembered strangers touring the villa and local children playing nearby, making it a vibrant spot in the community. My father had listed both the villa's and our old home's phone numbers in the newsletters. However, with the family home sold, any inquiries would now come to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was able to handle calls from foreign visitors as I was proficient in foreign languages. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with foreign languages. In addition to the stress of navigating the villa's traps, they were overwhelmed by unexpected visitors and foreign language calls. Exhausted and sleep-deprived, they retreated to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live here together?" my husband suggested. After eagerly awaiting my father's passing to claim the villa, they were ready to give it up after just 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband divorce papers that I had already prepared and signed. "There's no way we can live together under these circumstances. If you understand, please leave quickly," I said with a heavy heart. I couldn't forgive him for disregarding my feelings and acting insensitively without consulting me or providing any explanation. My husband decided that we would move in with his parents, leaving me with all the household responsibilities, as he had never shared them before. Feeling trapped, I confronted him about his selfish decision-making and disregard for my feelings. "What happened to the love you used to show me?" I couldn't help but laugh at his obliviousness. How could I love someone who wished for my father's death and would rejoice when he passed? Handing him only the divorce papers, I escorted them out of the apartment. "Firstly, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you." Despite my calm demeanor, my husband raised his voice, showing no concern for our neighbors. However, I remained firm. "Nathalie, I'll call the police for trespassing. If you don't want that, leave quietly." Their voices fell silent upon realizing the apartment was in my name. They relied on me financially and didn't have much of their own. However, I had already made up my mind to sever ties before they could begin their lengthy persuasions. Both my husband and in-laws had limited savings. After being forced out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they settled into a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to make ends meet. They often reminisced about the previous apartment, considering it better. Initially, my husband felt remorseful and apologized frequently. However, as time passed, he became resentful of his parents. With their advancing age, they rarely found stable employment, depleting their savings and pension. Each move only exacerbated their familial discord as they argued constantly within the thin walls of the apartment. Despite receiving noise complaints, they refused to apologize and instead retaliated, leading to strained relationships with their neighbors. They may soon need to search for another place to live. While my husband used to enjoy working from home, the current apartment lacked the luxury of a dedicated workspace. Struggling to focus on his work, his professional standing and sales took a nosedive. Now he barely makes ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and may need to take on multiple part-time gigs to survive. His in-laws regretted allowing their son to dictate their decisions, blaming him for their predicament during their frequent arguments. "If only you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess. You should have double-checked everything. Don't pin the blame on me. She's the one who kept things hidden," they argued. I remained silent as they continued their accusations. "If only you had communicated better with your father, none of this would have happened. I never imagined we'd end up like this because of our son," they lamented. Yet they had always harbored hopes of inheriting the villa and were elated when my father passed away. I'll never forget that. Following the divorce, I made significant progress in my career as a designer. To cope with my father's passing and these turbulent events, I incorporated ninja elements into my designs, sharing them on social media platforms. Their popularity surged, catching the attention of a major cosmetics company. To my surprise, they approached me for a project, designing packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja elements. It felt like a way to honor my father's memory, so I eagerly accepted the opportunity and poured myself into the work. The project was a resounding success, propelling my career to new heights. With joy in my heart, I shared updates at my parents' graves, grateful for the chance to honor their memory in such a meaningful way. I chose to keep the mechanical house, preserving it as a special place brimming with memories of my father. I began organizing tours and transformed it into a space where both tourists and local children could enjoy themselves free of charge. Soon, the house gained significant media attention, providing much-needed income to cover ongoing expenses. Additionally, online articles about the house were translated into foreign languages, garnering support from international fans. Some of the donations even came from elderly individuals who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I'm committed to maintaining this enchanting place for years to come. Meanwhile, The mechanical house remains a lively center of activity, especially beloved by local children. Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the surprises? Show us. With the help of dedicated local volunteers, precautions are taken to ensure the children can play safely. Foreign tourists are often amazed by features like the hidden floorboard doors. Wow, this is incredible. I'm so touched to experience such a unique place. What other surprises await? Despite losing my father and going through a divorce over the villa's inheritance, I believe the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories shared with loved ones. Through it all, I've experienced personal growth, embracing the future with renewed optimism and hope. My mother-in-law surprised me by saying, "I'm leaving with my son's new wife, so you'll take care of my husband from now on." It shocked me because it meant she was supporting her son's affair. It also seemed like my husband and mother-in-law planned to live with his mistress. But my father-in-law, who needs care due to his wheelchair, was left behind. Feeling torn between anger and responsibility, I couldn't abandon him. Just when I felt lost, my father-in-law suddenly stood up. "My name's Linda, and I'm turning 30 soon. I've been married to Tom for 3 years. At the start, we'd laugh over silly stuff daily, but lately our talks have dwindled. Is this what they call familiarity? We've moved from passionate love to craving stability. Our marriage is steady, but each day feels routine. About a year ago, Tom's overtime skyrocketed. He claims work got busier out of the blue. He never traveled for work before, but now he's gone every few months. Still, he provides for us, and I work too, so I'm not dwelling on him all the time. Sometimes he's home early, and we share dinner, filling the gaps. To outsiders, we might seem like a loveless couple, but that's not true. This is just how we are. To me, this is normal married life." One evening, I returned home from work to find my husband there, which was unusual since he never came back before 10 p.m. It was only 7 p.m. "Welcome home," he greeted me, making me wonder what was going on. "Tom, it's rare for you to be home this early. Did work finish early today?" I asked. He explained that his dad had an accident at work and was hospitalized, so he rushed home. I was shocked to hear about his father's accident. His car was hit by another running a red light, leaving him paralyzed in both legs and an arm. It was devastating news. My father-in-law, who loved outdoor activities like hiking and fishing, would now be confined to a wheelchair. He always treated me like his own daughter and offered help whenever needed. Seeing him in this condition was heartbreaking. My husband learned about his father's accident from his mother, since he works at a different company than his father. He seemed frustrated because he couldn't visit his dad right away. I was also deeply saddened by the news of my kind father-in-law's wheelchair-bound condition. But amidst the shock, my husband turned to me and said, "Linda, Mom needs a favor regarding Dad." "What does she need?" I asked. "She's asking if we can help take care of him together. Your mom's getting older. It might be tough for her alone, so she thinks we can assist together," he explained. "So we have to move in with your parents?" I questioned. "Yes, we do. There's enough space for us at their place. Is that okay?" I hesitated to answer. While I cared deeply for my father-in-law and loved him, agreeing to suddenly become his caregiver was daunting, considering I had no prior experience with it. I do care about my father-in-law, but I have a job. Being suddenly asked to become a caregiver leaves me unsure. I rack my brain for alternatives, but nothing seems feasible. He senses my hesitation and grasps my hand, pleading, "Linda, I know it's tough and new, but if we rely solely on Mom, she might struggle too. It's going to be hard." "I work too," I respond. "I want you to quit your job, Linda, and focus on caring for Dad alongside Mom. I'll handle our expenses." "Quit my job?" I'm taken aback. "Yes, I'll provide for us. Please, Dad in his wheelchair and Mom needing care. They both need your help." Tom kneels before me, pleading repeatedly. Seeing his desperate expression, it was tough for me to turn him down. So I followed his advice and quit my job to care for my father-in-law. As we settled into our new living arrangement, one evening during dinner, my husband suddenly stood up. He announced his plan to take over his father's company and become its president. My father-in-law appeared surprised but secretly pleased at his son's decision. With tears in his eyes, he addressed Tom. "I can't believe you're saying this. You always said you wouldn't work at my company." "Well, I was just hesitant before. But in this situation, I can't leave the company unattended, can I? Tom responded. Thank you, his father-in-law said sincerely. Concerned about the company's future, I contemplated leaving it to someone I trusted. When Tom expressed his willingness to take over, I felt reassured and agreed. I knew you'd accept. I'll do my best as a son, he promised. Please do. Ensure a good working environment for my employees, I requested. Of course, he assured me. With this understanding, Tom assumed the role of president while I became the chairman. Despite the traditional retirement connotations of the chairman position, there was still much work to be done. However, I soon realized that Tom was effectively running the entire company, leaving only my name behind. 2 months flew by since Tom became president. During this time, he started coming home late every night. Initially, I chalked it up to him adjusting to the new role. But it seemed odd to work overtime consistently for 2 months. Another reason for my growing suspicion was a particular smell he carried one evening when he returned. I found myself unable to sleep, waking up past midnight feeling thirsty. Hearing Tom enter, I greeted him and noticed the scent of soap on him. His reaction to seeing me was suspicious, quickly deflecting my comment about his late hours. It's late. Are you still awake? He asked. Yes, I couldn't sleep, I replied. You're still working late, Tom, I pointed out. Oh, just leave it. Taking over Dad's business was sudden, and I'm struggling to grasp it all. It's only been 2 months, so it's understandable, he explained defensively. I'm heading to bed now. I'm exhausted, my husband announced, swiftly making his way to the bedroom, the scent of soap trailing behind him. Suddenly, I grabbed his arm, my tone firm. Tom, who have you been working overtime with every day? What are you talking about all of a sudden? He replied, clearly taken aback. You smell like soap, I pointed out. You're imagining things. I'm just working hard. Don't hassle me with troublesome questions, he retorted, irritation creeping into his voice. His defensive demeanor only heightened my unease. Tom noticed my persistence and sighed heavily. I wish you'd stop. It's annoying to be interrogated as soon as I get home tired, he complained. I didn't mean it like that. I was just curious, I explained. Are you accusing me of cheating? I work hard every day so you can live comfortably, he shot back defensively. I understand that, but if you have time for such suspicions, you could at least tidy up, I replied. I don't have time for that, he snapped, stomping upstairs with deliberate noise. As my husband entered the bedroom, he turned away from me and buried himself in his smartphone. Despite my attempts to apologize, he completely ignored me. The following day, my mother-in-law, having been briefed by my husband about the previous night's events, approached me with a stern expression. Linda, did you accuse Tom of cheating yesterday? She demanded. No, that's not true. I simply asked him who he was working overtime with, I clarified. That's enough to cast doubt on him when Tom is working hard for your sake. Did you consider that? She scolded. Of course, I appreciate everything he does. I was just curious, I explained. Your actions were out of line. What do you hope to achieve by making Tom uncomfortable? It's not how a wife should behave, she lectured, dumping all the housework on me before storming off. Despite her facade of sharing household chores, my mother-in-law doesn't hold me in high regard. In reality, I'm the one who handles all the housework and cares for my father-in-law during the day, while she conveniently finds reasons to be out until evening. My father-in-law, who spends most of his time in his room, remains unaware of my mother-in-law's frequent absences. He rarely ventures out except for occasional meetings with company representatives. Additionally, my mother-in-law has warned me, don't say anything strange to James and Tom. I felt the unfairness of her self-centeredness, but all I could do was silently attend to household chores and caregiving. However, what kept me going through such a mundane routine was largely my father-in-law's presence. Each time I assisted him, he expressed genuine remorse. Linda, I'm sorry. I'm sure you dislike caring for an old man like me, he would say. Don't worry about it. I consider you my real father. Helping you brings me joy, I reassured him. I'm grateful that Tom married someone like you, Linda, he replied sincerely. Despite all the trouble I've caused you with my care, you still speak so kindly to me. I'm a lucky man, father-in-law, I expressed gratefully. I'm also happy to have such a kind person as my father-in-law, I added. Despite the discomfort caused by my husband and mother-in-law's behavior on many days, I found the strength to carry on because of my father-in-law's appreciation for me. My nightly routine involved helping my father-in-law get ready for bed and turning off the lights. Today, as I completed my tasks and returned to the living room, I was surprised to find my husband, who usually wasn't home at this time, sitting beside my mother-in-law. They appeared to be engaged in conversation, with my husband sporting a smirk. Sensing trouble, I braced myself as my mother-in-law spoke up, saying something that exceeded my expectations. "Oh, Linda, perfect timing. We need to talk," she declared abruptly. "Please take care of James here for the rest of his life," my mother-in-law declared abruptly. "What do you mean?" I questioned, bewildered by her statement. "Tom and I have decided to move in with his new wife," she explained casually. "A new wife?" I exclaimed, stunned by her sudden revelation. What does that even mean? Why is Tom silent? I wondered aloud. Without a word, Tom handed me divorce papers. "I'm seeing someone else now, and we're leaving with Mom," he announced bluntly. "What?" I gasped, struggling to comprehend. "I'm packing up. You deal with the divorce papers," he added callously. Overwhelmed, I collapsed in shock as they packed their bags and left without a second glance. Tears streamed down my cheeks in the silent living room. Suddenly, my father-in-law rolled in on his wheelchair. "Linda, what's happening? Why are you crying?" he inquired, concerned. I recounted the events to him, his expression shifting from concern to anger. His eyes glinted with fury as he processed the situation. With unexpected strength, he rose from his wheelchair, his voice resonating powerfully. "Let's fight back, Linda," my father-in-law declared with determination. "But your legs, James," I hesitated, concerned about his mobility. "I'm sorry for keeping it a secret. Actually, I've been able to walk for a while now." "Don't worry, just leave everything to me. I'm ready," he assured me, revealing his hidden capability. From a drawer, he produced a large envelope, unveiling its contents to me. "This is it, Linda," he said solemnly. Inside were numerous pieces of evidence documenting my husband's infidelity, alongside shocking evidence of my mother-in-law's involvement in extramarital affairs. According to my father-in-law, suspicions arose when Tom consistently left work on time, despite returning home well after midnight each night. Perplexed by this behavior, he tasked trusted employees to monitor Tom's activities. Through further investigation, it was revealed that both Tom and my mother-in-law were unfaithful. Remarkably, my father-in-law had even uncovered evidence suggesting my mother-in-law's awareness of Tom's affair, including incriminating photographs of the trio together. My father-in-law revealed that he had recently obtained the evidence and debated when to inform me. "I know it's not right to say this, but I'm glad I could tell you." "What do you want to do, Linda?" he inquired. "I can't tolerate this any longer. I want to fight back," I asserted. "Understood. Leave the rest to me," he assured me. Shortly after, my father-in-law swiftly dialed a number on his phone, contacting someone from the company. As a result, my husband was ousted from his position as president. Following my father-in-law's guidance, I initiated divorce proceedings, leveraging the evidence of infidelity to demand a fair division of property from Tom. About a week later, Tom visited my parents-in-law's house, visibly outraged. He addressed me and my father-in-law sternly. "Hey, Dad, what's all this about? How does infidelity relate to being ousted as president?" "Shut up. You neglected my care and caused Linda suffering. You were not ready to be president. I disown you. You are not welcome in this house," my father-in-law retorted firmly. Tom collapsed to his knees, tearfully pleading with me as I regarded him with disdain. "Linda, I beg you. I'm willing to cancel the divorce. Please persuade Dad with me. I'll end things with the other woman if you drop the property division demand," he implored. Even in that moment, his concern remained solely focused on himself. His self-centeredness left me utterly disillusioned. To shake off the lingering gloom, I adopted a bold stance and declared, "Withdraw the divorce, do you hear me? What are you even saying now? I never wanted it in the first place. I'm relieved to be rid of someone like you. I won't ever return to you," he retorted coldly. "So you filed for divorce?" I asked, taken aback. "Of course. Why should I remain married to someone like you? Your divorce and dismissal as president were entirely your own doing. You reap what you sow," he sneered. "What are you talking about? Those divorce papers were just a bluff," I protested. "I thought as much. You, your mother, your mistress. I hope you all suffer together. Don't expect any sympathy from me," I snapped, ushering him out and slamming the door shut. Tom's cries echoed from outside. Please help me. I was wrong. I don't want to lose you. Please forgive me, Linda. Dad, don't abandon me, he pleaded desperately. James and I remained silent, unmoved by his pleas. Upon learning of Tom's dismissal as president, his mistress wasted no time in evicting both him and his mother from their home. With no other options, they were compelled to reside in a budget motel for several days. Losing his job drained Tom and his mother's savings, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. They resorted to taking on day labor jobs, but their income was insufficient to cover even basic expenses. Unable to afford rent, they found themselves living hand to mouth and sinking into debt. Meanwhile, I continued caring for my father-in-law in his home even after the divorce. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, he'd assured me. Grateful for his generosity, I opted to remain by his side. Recently, he started attending a senior daycare center, allowing me to work while he's away. Though challenges may arise in the future, I'm committed to doing everything